Hello again. Sorry, I'm a little bit late this time, by the way. I should have posted a few days ago. Just recently, I saw Hamnet, this awful film, which I talked about in my blog recently. And I was talking about that to my sons this weekend, who have both been watching TV serials about popular English books, the Durrells, which I think was a BBC series based on Gerald Durrell's book, My Family and Other Animals, and I think some other novels. And All Creatures Great and Small, based on the James Herriot novels about a veterinary surgeon in the Yorkshire Dales in the 1930s. And it struck me that all of these films and series had something in common, and that was that they are all bent on a kind of revisionist changing of the narrative for political purposes. And I think that's worth discussing. Anyway, before we go on, I am Gary Craig Powell, if you don't know me, a blogger. I write the blog Write Dangerously and have started making these podcasts of the same name. I'm a fiction writer. I'm the author of a couple of books, well, more than that actually, but a couple of published books. Stoning the Devil, published by Skylight Press in 2012. And Our Parent Who Art in Heaven, published by Flame Books in 2022. So this podcast is really designed for people who are dissatisfied with the current cultural and political zeitgeist in which neo-Marxist feminist ideas are being imposed upon everybody, and it's an attempt to encourage people to read and write and generally live dangerously. That is against the establishment. So what do I mean by that? I mean, there's a lot of confusion about what the establishment or the elite is. Because in the past, when I was growing up, the establishment was still, to a large extent, the remnant of an inherited privileged class. That is an aristocratic class which had, certainly by the time I was born, married into the rich industrial class who had become absorbed into that aristocracy. And it was largely conservative. And when I was young, people of my generation, the boomers, probably the most stupid generation that's still alive, and of course I'm generalizing here. I am a boomer myself, and I know other whether I'm intelligent or not, you'll have to judge. But I know other intelligent boomers. Let's put it that way. However, there's no question that the boomers as a generation have been self-indulgent, selfish, childishly naive in following left-wing ideals, and extremely unrealistic in assessing the current political situation. Most of them still think they're fighting the battles of their youth against a repressive, conservative, even reactionary and capitalist elite, which in fact no longer really holds the power. So what's actually happened is that the boomers are now in control, boomers and Generation Xers, I suppose, and certainly in terms of the culture, the elite is now pretty solidly feminist, postmodern, materialist, and neo-Marxist, whether explicitly so or not. So let's just look at some of these cultural artifacts I mentioned as examples. And although we're talking about film and TV series, all of them are based on books. And I suspect, ludicrously enough, the authors, not the authors of the books, but the authors of the series would regard themselves as kind of transgressive, perhaps not revolutionaries, but radicals anyway, who are social activists who are trying to change society. So I read Gerald Durrell's My Family and Other Animals when I was at school, when I was 14 or 15, I think. It's a delightful little book about Gerald Durrell's family, who went to live in Corfu in, I think it's the 1930s, it might be the 1920s. And it's a hilarious story of this little boy falling in love with animals, with many other amusing stories woven into it. Gerald's brother is the great novelist Lawrence Durrell, one of my favourites, who was quite a bit older than him. And the initial series that I think the BBC put out was quite good, not entirely faithful to the book, but as one of my sons pointed out, it quickly becomes a kind of promotion of gay rights and gay lifestyles, which it's not in Durrell's writing at all. But this is what virtually every cultural artifact that we have to consume now does. It must push. It must push the LGBTQ agenda. It must push multiculturalism, which the Durrell thing does also with Turkish characters, Muslim characters. It must attack the very fabric of our civilization. And my other son told me that he'd been watching the original series of All Creatures Great and Small, which again is, very charming, perhaps not literarily significant, but very charming series of books about this country vet in West Yorkshire in, again, the 1930s. Most of my British viewers and readers will know it. But the latest series, which was filmed from 2020 onwards, has, surprise, multicultural characters in it. There's an Indian vet who is a rival to Siegfried Farnon, the head vet in this country practice, and he has a beautiful Indian daughter who is a kind of love interest for Tristan, the young vet. Well, I have to confess I haven't read the Harriet novels, or barely read any of them, but I think that it's fair to say that there were no Indian characters in them. There certainly were not in the first series. There's also a black woman in the cast. Were there Indians and black people in England in the 1930s? Yes, a tiny handful. Were there any in the Yorkshire Dales? Well, I doubt it, really. And again, I think this is just an instance of our cultural masters insisting that we recognise Britain as always having been a multicultural society. And it's the same in Hamnet. Hamnet is this sort of, in my view, childishly feminist rewriting of Shakespeare's biography. It's an attempt to give the postmodern perspective from the point of view of the silenced communities, and women particularly. And the idea is that women are, of course, wiser, more sensitive, more connected with nature. And Shakespeare's wife in this film, which for some reason they've called Agnes rather than Anne Hathaway, is a kind of unbelievably impressive earth mother. She's always screaming, which is very, very irritating, I think. But that's the basic idea of the film. The other thing which greatly irritated me about it is that towards the end of the film, when you go into the Globe Theatre, you start seeing quite a lot of black people in the audience. I counted at least 5 or 6, and a Muslim in Islamic dress, turban and robes and so on. And again, there may have been 1 or 2 people of other ethnicities in England at this time, but in tiny numbers. And the fact that there would be at least 5 or 6 in the Globe, I mean, that's staggeringly unlikely. This is sheer propaganda. So the woke onslaught continues. And what can we do? My advice, and here I'll give a book recommendation, is to go back to the source. Read Maggie O'Farrell's novel Hamnet by all means, but read Shakespeare first. Shakespeare's a lot better, I think. If you want, see All Creatures Great and Small, but read James Herriot. If you want, watch the Durrells, but read Gerald Durrell's My Family and Other Animals first, and read his brother's work, which is actually much better in literary terms. Okay, I'm running out of time, so I'll finish up. Once again, I'd like to wish you a happy February, I suppose. We've got terrible weather here in Portugal, terrible storms. I'd like to urge you to continue to live dangerously, read and write dangerously, my fellow free spirits, over men and over women. Bye-bye.